Hey, good afternoon to you. It is now 5:07 News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. You can join us today at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. It was back in March of 2021, just a little under 2 months into the Biden administration, that a number of pro-life activists were peacefully sitting outside of an abortion mill in Tennessee, Nashville, and they were singing church hymns. Here's what it sounded like at the time.
I heard an old story, how a Savior came from glory, how he gave his life on Calvary to save a wretch like me.
The people who were singing were subsequently convicted and had their lives turned into a living hell by the Biden administration. And that brings us all the way through to yesterday when President Trump announced that he was pardoning 23 activists, pro-life activists, who were subjected to persecution by Joe Biden and company.
Next, we have a set of pardons for peaceful pro-life protesters who were prosecuted by the Biden administration for exercising their First Amendment rights.
Do you know how many?
I believe it's 23, sir.
23 people were prosecuted. They should not have been prosecuted. Many of them are elderly people. They should not have been prosecuted. This is a great honor to sign this.
Joining me now, one of the men who was at that Nashville abortion mill, who was prosecuted by Joe Biden and who was just pardoned by President Donald Trump. Paul Vaughn is on the phone. He's alongside his attorney, Stephen Crampton. Paul, good to have you on the show, sir.
Vince, great to be with you this evening.
And Stephen, thank you for joining us as well.
Hey, thank you for having us, Vince. Great to be with you.
Paul, let's just start with your reaction to this pardon. Tell us, how did you find out, and how does this make you feel?
Sure. I mean, obviously very relieved and overjoyed at the first step in addressing and at least admitting the injustice that was done to us. It was interesting. Steve and I were on a panel yesterday afternoon at some of the March for Life events here in D.C., and in the middle of the panel is when the word came down. So we were together answering questions, and got to announce it to the group as live as the news happened, as it were.
That's a really big deal. Take us back in time. You were, I said, March of 2021. You're outside of this abortion mill in Nashville, and how soon after that do your legal problems begin at the hands of the Biden administration?
So it was 18 months later. It wasn't until October 5th of 2022 that the Gestapo FBI showed up at my door with guns drawn, banging on my house, terrorizing my wife and children, and arresting me. And so it took 18 months. And of course, Dobbs had been had the Supreme Court decision had come down since in between the event and the arrest. And so it's a good long time, long enough that we completely forgot and we couldn't figure out why the FBI was at the door at the time.
And they never reached out to you ahead of time. They never said, "Hey, we want to talk to you." It was nothing like that. It was just their first interaction was guns drawn at your door.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh, what a nightmare! What a complete nightmare. And so I remember there was your wife captured video of it, and she was asking for answers, and she was getting treated very poorly by the agents who came there to intimidate your family.
Yeah, you bet. And she had the forethought to get the camera when she went back in. Part of their tactic for dealing with the spouse or whatever when you're arresting someone and trying to get them in the car is to send them on an errand. So they send her back for a shirt for me, and she came back with her phone, and that really helped to shine the light on the injustice that was going on. And Vince, the atrocity, it's just unheard of. They didn't show any identification. They didn't present a warrant for my arrest or anything until after I was locked away in custody. They showed me the warrant, a digital copy on a laptop, but they never told my wife. They never told my kids. They never told my sheriff, my state representatives, our friends, our family. Nobody in Tennessee knew where I was for over 6 hours that morning. And my wife and our our friends who happen to be a lawyer were calling around, looking, trying to
Yes.
find FBI agents and see if we didn't know they were even legit. They had Velcro badges, the only identification that they presented. So it was a long morning, to be sure.
Yeah, and either way, I mean, if they're legit, of course, in the end, we know that they were, but they should be ashamed of themselves for going after you. Singing church hymns outside of an abortion mill? Don't they have more important things to do? Stephen Crampton, again, you're Paul Vaughn's attorney, senior counsel for the Thomas More Society. I'm still struggling to figure out what they could even pretend was criminal about what I just described, because it sounds to me like everything involved was a First Amendment right.
Well, certainly there was a lot of First Amendment expressive activity and outright expression, religious worship involved. But some of the folks, not all, not Paul, positioned themselves right in front of the entrance to the abortion facility. So they legitimately, arguably, had a basis for coming in and sending these folks home. In fact, the local authorities did make a few arrests that day for criminal trespass. Again, not Paul Vaughn. Paul wasn't anywhere close to the door.
Mm-hmm.
So the event was handled locally. It was prosecuted locally. It was forgotten for a year and a half. And then they basically blow down Paul's door with the FBI SWAT team coming to play. Whatever happened, Vince, to the idea of de-escalation when you're involved in anything that has a potential for violence? Isn't that like rule number one of the law enforcement community?
Yes. Well, unless you want to make a spectacle, out of the person you're going after. So, sometimes when you go after super violent criminals, you perp walk them in a public way in order to warn other violent criminals that there are consequences. What your client, with Paul, what you were subjected to was a national perp walk for your deeply held religious convictions.
Absolutely, Vince. And don't make a mistake about it, right? It wasn't really even about me. It was much more about the pro-life movement at large and any pro-life Christians that would dare stand up and speak the unspeakable narrative under Biden's DOJ that we think human life is valuable. I mean, it's as simple as that. It's a narrative that they didn't want to hear. They intentionally, after the fall of Roe, set up this reproductive task force to push a narrative and say they're going to protect abortion, even though, what happened to the rule of law? The liberals are always talking about follow the rule of law. Well, they didn't follow it. They went and set up a task force specifically to go against what the Supreme Court said. And so that's the reality. It was a tactical raid with a very specific intention, and that was to send a message to the pro-life community in America.
I know there were a number of pro-life activists who were arrested and treated this way by the Biden administration. Refresh my memory. Was this when you were singing these church hymns outside of this abortion mill? Wasn't there an older woman sitting in a wheelchair who was among the people who was participating?
Yes, a beautiful lady that one of my daughters is named after, Eva Edel. She's an 89-year-old concentration camp survivor, and she has just been an icon in the pro-life movement for years because she saw up front early on as a child what communism and these black booted thugs bring to a nation. And she saw that abortion was leading us down this path that ultimately, came to fruition into the Biden regime here.
Stephen Crampton, as an attorney, the underlying law that the Biden administration went after everyone here for was violating something called the FACE Act, is what they've been saying. It sounds to me like this law is pretty close to, if not outright unconstitutional. Do you think that this needs to be reformed or have this law yanked from the books?
Well, absolutely. On a number of fronts, Vince. In a nutshell, number one, law enforcement generally, the police power so-called, is by our Constitution reserved as a power to the states, not the federal government.
Right.
Number two, as we indicated here, this was handled locally and should have been dispensed with, and forgotten locally. But FACE is also unconstitutional because Congress, as you know, only has limited authority as specified under Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. The only way they can even put a hook into reaching this kind of purely non-economic, non-violent activity is to pretend it has something to do with interstate commerce. And that's just a bald-faced lie, too. So it's unconstitutional on a number of levels. And frankly, we're pretty optimistic with the new Congress, bills introduced by Congressman Chip Roy in the House and Senator Mike Lee in the Senate, that there's real momentum to repeal this thing. And of course, we're arguing in court that it's unconstitutional as well. So we're attacking it on every front.
Paul Vaughn, I understand that you were at the March for Life today. Tell us about your experience there with so many thousands of people out marching on behalf of these beautiful babies. What was it like being out there with them today, especially in the wake of this news?
I'm sure it's great. It was always great when you get together with a bunch of like-minded people that you feel camaraderie with and just encouragement. You know, you get to a pro-life event and you just come away encouraged. But it's even more so, right, doubly so with on the heels of the pardon. Literally walking down the street today and bump into one of my co-defendants that I didn't even know was in town. So we rejoiced together on the sidewalk there over the pardon and talked a little bit on the way there. And so, yeah, it was a great day, and it was really great to see the momentum in the pro-life movement. And I really think there's a lot of good things to come, and redeeming the culture of life in our nation, and just identifying and helping the culture understand that if we value good things and we don't want to see evil in the culture, right, then we have to value basic life, and human life equals human rights, and no matter how small.
Amen. And finally, Paul Vaughn, today, the great news that you've been pardoned by President Trump. Is there a message you have for the president?
Well, obviously, gratitude, first and foremost. It's so great to have a man that keeps his word, that says he's going to do something, that follows through. And so we're very thankful and encouraged by his actions of bringing some sanity back to the world. But then I would also just say, Mr. President, that our message has to be consistent. If it's a human life at conception, at 6 weeks, at 8 weeks, at 12 weeks, it's worth protecting. And our laws need to reflect the reality that human life begins at conception. And we need that to be our public communication as we go forward. So I just would challenge us all to be consistent in our understanding of where we all came from, which was the womb at the moment of conception.
Yeah, you're right about that. And everything else, too. Paul Vaughn, thank you very much. Good to talk to you today, sir. Stephen Crampton, thank you as well. Paul, congratulations. Got a lot of stories coming out right now about the United States military, its involvement in the border security mission, border crossings plummeting, illegals being rounded up. Violent illegals, that's the first priority. And then collateral illegals, you know, the people hanging out with the violent illegals, all being gathered up, flights to other countries to drop everybody off. It's been amazing, actually. Just over 100 hours into the Trump presidency, a lot of action. We'll bring you some updates here in a few minutes. First, to the phones we go. Don is calling in from Washington, D.C. on line 2. Don, you are on the Vince Coglianese Show. Hello, sir.
Man, hello. Thank you for taking my call. I was just want to express, the outrage. I was watching the news and the Life March, and
the March for Life.
March for Life. Thank you. I'm a Black American, and I'm looking out there. I didn't see too many any Black clergy, or unless I was wrong, wasn't a good population I thought to represent, because most of the abortions are within the African American community. Last time I checked, 35 to 40%. And I'm just outraged that I don't see enough Black Americans that are involved with that and saying that it's wrong. I just wanted to express my frustration with that.
Don, why do you? I'm going to take your word for it. I was watching some of the on-stage activity today, but I wasn't really scanning the crowd for that in particular. But why do you think that is? Why do you think that that there's not more of a Black presence at the March for Life?
You know what? I'm dumbfounded. Margaret Sanger, she invented abortion, and she quoted, Blacks don't have the right to appropriate. Mm-hmm. She made the procedure just for that purpose. and then the Planned Parenthoods are all where within the inner cities.
Yep.
You know, they had a Planned Parenthood executive or whatever. She had a come to Jesus moment, and she came out and said, you know, she would go to those cities where those Planned Parenthoods at that wasn't making any money, and she would promote, you know, abortions to those young girls in school, handing out flyers, you know. And so I'm just dumbfounded with this.
That is the history. You're right. Margaret Sanger was a eugenicist, and she targeted these black communities, these black populations, in order to limit the number of babies that black Americans would have. And by the way, like her racism extended all over the place. They were testing these birth control pills on women in Puerto Rico, sterilizing them. They did some awful things, Margaret Sanger and company. And the left has really just spent so long just whitewashing that, haven't they, Don? To the point that I feel like a lot of people don't know the history that you're talking about.
Man, they be on the internet and Google. They can just pull it up real easy.
Yeah.
And they don't know. Well, I mean, everybody knows too. Martin Luther King received the Margaret Sanger Award. You know, so that's another issue. You know, I'm not gonna turn some cheeks up, but that's just the fact of things.
Yeah, I think a lot of eyes are being opened, though. I think we're in an awakening phase, and it's. I hope we get a lot more people out there of all colors. Hey, Don, thank you. Yeah, it's a pro-life march. Who could be against it? And yet they have to march because there are people who are against it. It's too much. It's too much. But God bless everybody who got out there today. Man, it was cold. Good for you, bundling up. It was about as warm of a crowd as you could possibly imagine on a cold day, cold January day here in Washington, D.C. Yeah, coming up, the border mission seems to be going pretty well already. People aren't even trying to get across the border. You have some would-be illegals who are saying, yeah, no thanks. I don't think I'm getting in. That's right. There's a new sheriff in town. Stay with us. Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 5:36 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. I do have some updates for you on the border and the effort to get control of it. But first, I guess I want to focus on the breaking news in the hours ahead. And that's whether Pete Hegseth will become the next Secretary of Defense. Will he get confirmed by the United States Senate? Yesterday, two Republican defections publicly, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski. Susan Collins, who did vote for every single Biden cabinet pick in 2021. Now she's against Trump cabinet picks? What a joke. So you voted for Alejandro Mayorkas and Xavier Becerra and all these other goons? That's who you voted for? Susan Collins? And now you won't vote for Pete Hegseth? What a scam. And then Lisa Murkowski is right up there the same. She was all in on Biden picks. I think out of the 21 first cabinet picks that Joe Biden made, she voted for 19 of them. The only two that she defected on were Xavier Becerra for HHS and Jerry Bernstein, the Council of Economic Advisors. Those are the only two she defected on. The rest, she was in lockstep with Joe Biden. Lockstep. And here they are, hemming and hawing, or in this case, straight up saying, no, I'm not going to support Pete Hegseth. I can't support him. You know, you can't even run a Senate office. You're criticizing him? You say he can't run the Pentagon? The President of the United States on the tarmac this morning was asked about some of this.
Look, whatever it is, he's a good man. I don't know what's going to happen. You never know in those things, but Pete's a very, very good man. I hope he makes it.
I don't like the sound of that. I don't like that. Are you picking that up too, Corey? Like that's kind of like things are on the edge right now. It could tilt either way. That's the tone I'm getting.
I was very surprised that Collins and Murkowski would do that. And, of course, Mitch is always a no vote, I guess. Is Mitch a no vote? How about Mitch? He what? Let's see what happens. All right, so
he's kind of so in other words, the president, as of this morning, wasn't clear on what Mitch McConnell is going to do. The state of math here is that Hegseth can lose 3 votes. So Collins, Murkowski, McConnell, that puts us at a tie. That's when J.D. Vance comes in and breaks it. And then Pete Hegseth gets confirmed to be the Secretary of Defense. That's the arrangement. Yesterday, McConnell voted to advance the Hegseth nomination, to end debate on the subject, and to get us to that like kind of 30-hour window, which we're all experiencing right now, which is set to end pretty soon. So we could have a Hegseth vote tonight. But McConnell, a question mark as of this morning, even to the President of the United States, he doesn't know. He doesn't have a good relationship with Mitch. And so we don't know what's going to happen there. So here's the Wall Street Journal. In the last hour, they have their headline is the following. I'm telling you, if there's ever been a time to start making these phone calls to these U.S. senators, it's now. Wall Street Journal headline right now, Republicans not certain about Hegseth confirmation vote. Just out within the last hour. Dateline Washington, even President Trump isn't sure if Pete Hegseth, his unconventional pick to lead the Pentagon, can squeak through what Republican lawmakers now expect to be an extremely close confirmation vote Friday night in the GOP-controlled Senate. They refer to the audio you just heard and say that Trump was surprised that 2 centrist Republican senators, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska and Susan Collins of Maine, had voted against moving forward. Both women also said that they would oppose his confirmation in the final vote scheduled for Friday night. That's tonight, citing his lack of experience, concern about his character, and his past statements opposing women in combat. How dare he? How dare he be concerned about high standards in the United States military? Thought that was what we were looking for. And then they referenced how President Trump had mentioned that Mitch is always a no vote, I guess. Is Mitch a no vote? How about Mitch? Let's see what happens. McConnell voted to advance the nomination Thursday, but he hasn't said how he plans to vote on final confirmation Friday. McConnell said in a floor speech last week that he would vote to confirm senior national security nominees, quote, whose record and experience will make them immediate assets, not liabilities, in the pursuit of peace through strength. Republicans control the Senate, 53-47. In his role as president of the Senate, Vice President J.D. Vance can break any ties. That means Hegseth can afford only 3 Republican no votes if all Democrats unite against him, as expected. Other than Collins and Murkowski, who are on the record as no, and McConnell, whose position is unknown, nearly all other Republican senators have said they plan to vote yes on Friday. One exception, Senator Tom Tillis of North Carolina, who said Thursday night that he was still, quote, completing due diligence on the latest allegations against Hegseth, which surfaced earlier this week in a sworn statement from Hegseth's former sister-in-law, Danielle Hegseth. Let me add what the Wall Street Journal is not adding here. Hegseth's ex-wife, who is supposed to have been the victim in the abuse that's alleged, is on the record saying it's not true. Denying it. This is a last-second Brett Kavanaugh-esque style smear campaign. Why are they marshaling so many smears against Pete Hegseth so aggressively at this very late hour? Why are they doing that? Unless, of course, he's a threat to the status quo. Maybe that's the explanation. That's the whole point, that he's coming in to shake things up. There's a real effort to destroy him. And senators who fall for it, they're the mark. They're the dopes. They're the guys who are getting the wool pulled over their eyes. Or they're a part of the corruption, one or the other. Tom Tillis should not fall for this. Tom Tillis is up for re-election next year. He's up for re-election next year. Not a good time to be going against the Trump agenda, is it? We'll see. Senate Republicans, the Wall Street Journal says, are now concerned about Tillis. People familiar with the matter said Friday afternoon. The Trump team also is most worried about Tillis, Trump is, and his team, because he could potentially be the fourth no. Asked Friday afternoon if he was certain that Tillis would vote yes. Senate Republican Whip John Barrasso demurred. Quote, "We're continuing to work on the process," said Barrasso, whose job it is to count votes in the Senate GOP. So even the whip, the Republican whip, doesn't know what direction Tom Tillis is heading in right now. So that's the breaking news this afternoon as we await this very critical role. These senators, I hope they don't waste our time. I hope they don't waste their time. Every one of them deserves the Joni Ernst treatment right now. Just the outright, unbridled, spoken word aggression of the American people. Get Pete into office. Get him started. Our Pentagon desperately needs it. I've got story after story in front of me right now of military deployments that are happening as we speak in order to support the border mission. We've got members of the United States military who are headed in. We need everyone working for the agenda that the American people just voted for. And Pete Hegseth knows how to do it. That's why President Trump placed his confidence in him. And the Senate at the moment appears to be placing this in peril. At least that's the way the Wall Street Journal is saying it. And certainly with Tom Tillis hanging out there, making all of us await his... What are we going to get to a vote? And he's just going to... We'll find out when he votes? Is that how this is going to go down? What kind of leadership is that? What are you doing, John Thune? Is that how this is going to play out tonight? We're going to get a John McCain-style thumbs down from Tom Tillis this evening? Come on. Let's not do that. Task and Purpose is a military news publication. They write about the Army and Marine Corps units who are headed to the border right now. Military, police, and engineers from 8 states are among the Army and Marine units the Pentagon is sending to the southern border this week, while soldiers with the 82nd Airborne and the 10th Mountain Divisions could join them very soon, a U.S. official confirming today. The soldiers from the 82nd Airborne and the 10th Mountain have not yet been issued prepare to deploy orders, according to an official who spoke to Task and Purpose. Rather, they've been informed that if the Secretary of Defense orders the Army to send more troops to the southern border, they would be the next to go. No information was immediately available on Friday about exactly how many soldiers from those divisions might deploy, but the U.S. official confirmed that the entire divisions would not be sent to the southern border, not the entire divisions. If they are deployed, the soldiers from the 82nd Airborne and the 10th Mountain Division would continue to carry out active duty troops' current missions on the border, the U.S. official says. A Stryker brigade with the Army's 4th Infantry Division has also been informed that it might deploy to the southern border if additional troops are needed. As of Friday, the brigade had not received any orders to prepare to deploy. On Wednesday, 2 days ago, the Defense Department announced it was deploying 1,000 soldiers and 500 Marines in response to Trump's declaration of a national emergency on the southern border. U.S. Northern Command, NORTHCOM, saying today that the exact number of personnel is going to fluctuate as units rotate personnel and as additional forces are tasked to deploy once planning efforts are finalized. We need a Secretary of Defense. We need somebody running the Pentagon right now. We need them. And that person is Pete Hegseth. That's who President Trump has nominated, who has really impressed a lot of military guys, a lot of them. We get messages all the time from guys who are impressed by Pete Hegseth, who know that world. And yet, Murkowski, Collins, maybe McConnell, maybe Tillis, right now causing a whole bunch of trouble rather than heeding the will of the American people and the vote that they just cast. Nina is in Bristow now on line 2. Nina, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Good afternoon, Mr. Coglianese. Thank you for taking my call.
Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to remind myself and you and everybody that's listening that, we've waited 5 years for this moment, right? And simultaneously, Mr. Trump, President Trump, has had 5 years to think about all the moves he's going to make. He's a good chess player. He's setting up the chessboard. I want to remind everyone that this is all part of the plan, right? He wanted to drain the swamp. He couldn't because he was obstructed in his first term. Coming back, if you remember, he said, listen, I didn't know what I was doing then. I'd only been in D.C. 17 times. I got inaugurated. It was a surprise to all of us. Now I know who's who. And I'm making selections on purpose. I'd like to say, please let us have faith. Let us have faith in this man that we have all prayed for and elected to be our president to run this beautiful country. And let us know that he has a plan and he's insulated himself in a way where he's put smart people in place This is, in my opinion, an opportunity for us to see who is who. We have a lot of people yet to wake up.
I agree.
And I'm happy about the dissenters because it really is an opportunity for us to see who is a swamp creature and what he needs to do to drain them. So
yes, but I totally agree with you. You're right. This is clarifying. President Trump is the single most clarifying figure of our entire lives when it comes to American politics. He really helps sort out who's who and whose side they're on. I will say the one thing that I want to avoid, though, and I don't think you're suggesting this, but I just want to, as we think about this, is the idea that any of us should sit back and just watch it happen and let him work. Because I think that kind of abdicates our own role in all of this, which is when we see these guys going sideways, we have every right and obligation as an American citizen to step up and say, no, get back in line. Because, so in other words, Trump shouldn't have to do this by himself. I mean, Trump has picked a guy that he has faith in, Pete Hegseth. So now it's up to the rest of us to wear out the phone lines of these idiots who are going to try and stray away from the agenda that the rest of us just voted for, don't you think?
I totally agree with you, but it's orchestrated, right? It's a kind of a two-piece thing. We all believe in Hegseth. We believe in him because of what we know, the research we've done on our own, plus the vetting that Trump has, stamped upon him. You have to remember he's a man of God, and just like Noah was a drunkard, but God chose him to repopulate the earth after he destroyed every living creature on earth, except for those that Noah had taken on his boat, right? It's these are things that we have, the fundamental values and morals that we all hold on to, which is what allowed us, our faith in God, our faith in our country, our faith in ourselves. That's what allowed us to come together in such a powerful way and bring him back, right? You're right. We don't have to lay down and lay our swords down and say, okay, yeah, he's got it under control. We still have to do it. But it's a great opportunity for those that have still not woken up.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. It's
good.
That
you're voting for.
Yeah. Keep your eyes open. Good. Keep your eyes open. Watch who's on your side and learn from it. You're totally right. Thank you, Nina.
Exactly.
I appreciate that call.
Sleep with one eye open. Thank you, sir.
Oh man, you got it these days. All right, let's go to the phones. I've got Bruce calling in from Aldi now on line 4. Bruce, you're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
At the risk of insulting middle schoolers, these senators have got to stop acting like a bunch of middle schoolers. I think Vice President Vance needs to go down there as president of the Senate, grab the gavel from John Thune, and get these guys whipped in line, get these people whipped in line, and get it done. Get them all done. Not just Hegseth, but Gabbard, Kennedy, the whole lot of them. We got to get going.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't think they realize just how idiotic they look.
Big time. And also, what is the deal with Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski? They vote for all of Biden's nominees, and then they throw a hissy fit when Trump presents nominees? You're not even a rhino at that point. You're a Democrat in Republican clothing. You're a Dirk. I mean, whatever. It's insane.
Yeah, as our friend Dan Bongino says, all Democrats are Democrats, and a lot of Republicans are Democrats. So I think I'm saying that wrong, but
yeah, it's some version of that. You're right about that. He's right about that. It's quite unfortunate, and we're watching it play out again.
We got to get rid of the uniparty. I mean, I'm going to call my 2 worthless senators here in Virginia and see what I can do. But
yeah. Maybe we can shake out another vote somehow. Shake some sense into them. Hey, thanks, Bruce. Yeah, no, good point.
Mark Warner is up for election next year.
Yeah. Man, those guys have to go. All right. Well, we'll keep tracking it. I do know a good place where you can find out all of the breaking details about tonight's vote in the Senate. It's WMAL. The great one, Mark Levin, is up next on this fine radio station.